Hello, and you're all very welcome along to another episode of the Gaelic Statsman podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Hurley, and I'm here to present the Gaelic Statsman podcast for this weekend. It is the championship for week 4 in both hurling and football. Hurling it's week 2, football it's week 4, but overall it is week 4. And a very interesting weekend in store. We have Sam Maguire Tailteann Cup places to be decided. The hurling championship, obviously, it's a make or break weekend for Cork and Clare in particular in the Munster hurling championship. We'll get onto that in a sec. And yeah, just an interesting weekend altogether. I'm delighted to be joined as well by Aaron Prendergast from Gaelic Games Fan TV to discuss this weekend's action. And before we get into the action, shout out to our sponsors at Capture Athletics. If you want to get the best gear around, Gaelic gear around for your club or any team in particular, check out Capture Athletics in the link in the description. So yeah, Aaron, good weekend to look forward to, as we were saying off air, but maybe one game will be a bit more one-sided than others, a bit more, I'll stress that. But how are you feeling ahead of the weekend?
Yeah, cheers for having me on, Matthew. Looking forward to the weekend's games. Should be some absolute crackers in there. Not as much football action, obviously, as the weekend's gone. With the fact that obviously we're coming to the later stage of provincial championships, but yeah, like you've obviously got 2 semi-finals in Ulster. I think one game that everybody will be looking at is Donegal Armagh. Or Donegal Tyrone. Can Tyrone upset the odds? Can Donegal go and reach an Ulster final? You feel like Ulster is blown a little bit wide open now, pressure a little bit on Armagh, but they should, you would imagine, beat down. And then in Leinster, like obviously, yeah, I think as we were saying, like Dublin Offaly is probably going to be a foregone conclusion. And then you've got Louth Kildare, which could be very interesting. The precursor. I do kind of want to watch Donegal Tyrone, so unfortunately I probably won't get to see the Louth Kildare game that's on before, but at the same time it should be a very good game. And obviously the hurling action, like I think you only have to look at the Munster hurling championship last weekend to see how entertaining those games were. And I think Limerick Tipperary and Cork going up against Clare, like 2 cracking games there, and I suppose Galway Kilkenny maybe the pick of the bunch in the Leinster hurling championship as well.
Yeah, exactly. So the football, it tends to be a very interesting weekend as usual in the football, but we will start off with the hurling because this weekend is going to be an absolute cracker of a weekend. And the one game, 2 sides under immense pressure going to Super Valley Park Keefe on Sunday. Cork against Clare in the Munster Senior Hurling Championship on Sunday at 2 p.m. on GA Go. Just before we get into the game, Aaron, this game on GA Go, what do you think of that? I think it's Kilkenny Galway going to be on RT at this time. What's your general thoughts on this game being on GA Go? It's a bit strange considering this is a huge game for both sides. The loser of this is going to be out of the Munster Championship.
Yeah, it always seems to be Cork that get on GA Go. Like I've noticed this quite a lot from the last couple of years in both football and hurling. There always seems to be big games involving Cork that ends up on GA Go for some reason. But yeah, look, I suppose it's one of them where it's a big game. It's probably the biggest hurling game of the weekend. So it's a little bit surprising it's not on RTE. Like the Galway Kilkenny game, it's a bit of a free hit in some ways. There's nothing really hugely on the line there. Like Kilkenny could lose by 6 points, Galway could lose by 10 points, and I don't think really there's a huge amount of ramification for either side because both of them are still probably going to be in a Leinster final. Let's be perfectly honest. Like even with the fact that Dublin and Wexford drew, like it makes it even more of a foregone conclusion in my opinion. So yeah, it's a little bit disappointing the Cork Clare game isn't on RTE. Maybe they've looked at it and I suppose they have to try and get people into GA Go, so they have to try and throw some attractive games on there. So obviously I know you have a subscription. I obviously have the subscription as well, and I'm sure a lot of GA fans do, so it won't really make a difference now. But I think, maybe for any passionate Cork and Clare fans who don't have access to GA Go or have bad internet or whatever, it would be be very disappointing for either one of them.
Yeah, I suppose so. But even I was in Killarney last weekend and seen actually the GA Go team. They were very near where I was in Killarney, and they actually, it seemed like they were doing a good job. They were walking all over the field. The pundits were actually over the field in Killarney watching what was going on in the game, whereas I think RT would just stay at their desks. at the game. So GA Go are actually very good. The pundits are very good. Like the ideas are excellent as well. Like interview with the referees before games, I think is a brilliant idea as well. They're better than RT for that, but I suppose the issue there is lack of internet in some places around the county, around Cork, around Clare in particular, for this game, and other things as well. Obviously, the subscription fee, I think it's €79. I had to pay anyway this year. I'm sure you have to pay that as well, Aaron. So yeah, it was an expensive fee, but in fairness, they are very good pundits, and it is on GA Go this weekend. And on the game, like just the ramifications around this game, because I see one of your reels earlier on Instagram about Cork and Clare that you're saying it's more important to Cork, and I'd absolutely agree with you. I think like they're playing Limerick after this. Limerick will get better as the season goes on. There's no doubt about that. So do you think this game is more crucial to Cork than it is to Clare? No doubt it's crucial to Clare, but like it's a huge game for Cork, especially at home as well. And especially the last time these two sides played each other at Páirc Uí Chaoimh in the championship, Cork beat them in 2018, beat Clare, and it was a handsome enough victory as well. So like it's crucial for Cork to get over the line this game.
Absolutely, yeah, it's massive. I mean, it's massive for both teams. Like no side and since the round robin's been introduced, like no side have lost their opening two games and then went on to get out of Munster. So that really does put it down to.
I think one has, Aaron. I think it was actually Cork, coincidentally, in 2022. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, it was around then. Yeah,
it was actually. Now that I think about it, yeah. So, like, yeah, I think it's one of them where like Cork, if they lose, because they have Limerick next, and I actually think the Limerick game is at home. I'd originally thought it was away, but I think you've actually got them at home in fairness. But like even with that though, like even if you were to lose this game against Clare and then you have Limerick at home, like nothing hugely even changes there, in my opinion, in terms of either playing them away or playing them at home. Like maybe a slight more advantage playing them at Páirc Uí Chaoimh. But yeah, it's absolutely huge for Cork, because I think like to go back-to-back years without getting out of Munster, I think it'd just be a massive, massive setback considering the huge amount of underage success. There is a huge amount of talent in Cork, and we see it in club championships. We see it obviously with the under-20s. We see it in the panel, like the amount of really, really top-class forwards that Cork do have, and a lot of very good hurlers that Cork do have. But yeah, like if you were to lose this, then adding all that pressure into the Limerick game, if you lose that, you could be gone by the time you even play Tipperary in the final game. So, yeah, it's absolutely huge for Cork. I mean, it's huge for Clare as well. Like, how do they respond after such a demoralising defeat versus Limerick? Like, it's one thing getting beat by Limerick, but to get beat by 9 or get beat after leading by 9 points and then completely throwing the lead away, like it doesn't really get much tougher than that. So, yeah, looking at it, it's a massive game for either side, and it's going to go down to the wire. I think there's only going to be a point or two in it, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it's quite interesting actually looking at the head-to-head between these two sides. I'm actually looking at a site called Know the Game. It's on X if you haven't checked it out already. Really good site for even looking back at head-to-head records between sides in previews to games. I was looking back at the one between Clare and Cork actually. Cork have won most of them going back to the 1920s anyway. But looking at the last 5 games in the championship between the sides, Clare have won 3 games. They've actually won the last 2 in 2022 in Semple Stadium Thurles, and last year obviously that Dermot Ryan lay point. The last time Cork beat them in the Munster Championship was the Munster final in 2018. That time when Cork got to the All-Ireland semi-final, they beat them in the All-Ireland series in 2021. That was the time when Patrick Collins made a late save. So like history would suggest that Cork have the upper hand on Clare when you look at it going back all the way. But when you look at recent records, Clare actually have Cork's number when you look at the last few games. Like the last 4 meetings, Cork have only won once. And that game in particular, you could argue if Patrick Collins didn't make that save in the last minute from Tony Kelly, Cork would have lost that game as well. So it's going to be crucial as well for Cork, not just to stay in the Munster Championship, but to right the wrongs of that record too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because for a long time, like Cork had a really good record against Clare. Like I think 2013 was the only time Clare had beaten Cork in championship in about 2 decades. Like up until the last 4 or 5 meetings. So yeah, I think for Cork, it's all about sort of reasserting their authority a little bit, and sort of reasserting their dominance, from obviously what they would have had 15, 20 years ago. But unfortunately, like, this Cork isn't the same Cork. They have plenty of talent, there's no doubt about it, but there just never really seems to be any structure where Cork's play. Like, it just seems to be a little bit all over the place, seems to be very erratic. There doesn't seem to be much confidence at the best of times in Cork. I feel like last year was the only year where when you did concede a goal, like, your heads wouldn't go. You'd actually keep yourselves in it, and you might drag out a draw or it'd be a narrow defeat. But against Waterford, like, as soon as Waterford went 1-4 to a couple of points up early on, like, Cork's heads just dropped, and like, it was like your heads went. Shots were going wide, chances were going astray, and weirdly, like, when you went down to 14 men, I actually thought you started playing better, because it was almost like maybe the pressure was off ever so slightly, because it was like, well, everyone expects us to lose now. Then Alan Connolly gets a goal, and all of a sudden it's game on. So it's a weird one with Cork. Like, they have to start fast and they have to start strong, because there's no doubt Clare will be a little bit vulnerable and a little bit, they'll still be hurting over that Limerick defeat. Confidence will be low. And if Cork can start fast, then Clare could be on the back foot and maybe their heads could go. So you feel like the opening 15, 20 minutes is so crucial, because both sides will be coming in with low confidence, and whoever starts the better. Like, I think could possibly go on and win it.
That's a crucial start and a crucial point, all right. But like, for Clare, the last 10 minutes in particular against Tipperary, or against Limerick, excuse me, like, what do you think actually happened to Clare after Dermot Burns hit that fluky goal into the back of the net? Did you think their heads just dropped? Did things just go wrong? What do you think actually happened in that defence in the last few minutes? Because even for Aaron Gillan's goal, you could argue, yes, square ball, not a square ball, whatever. But to give Garrod Haggerty that amount of space when you're losing the game already, like, what actually was going on with the Clare defence, do you think?
Yeah, I think it was a mix of things, really. I think it was Limerick stepping up and rising to the occasion, but it was also Clare. Clare, yeah, without doubt, their heads did go, and they did bottle it in many ways. Like, there's absolutely no doubt about it. I mean, they were 9 points ahead going into the final. 15 minutes, you bring on your best player and Tony Kelly. I think bringing on Tony Kelly was arguably a mistake as well, because the intensity of the game was so high at that point. Tony Kelly hasn't played any inter-county hurling all year. You're throwing him on in a massive game. In theory, it makes sense, because like, you want to, if he can add 2 or 3 extra scores, then at the bare minimum it should be enough. But you threw him on when the game was like literally in the melting pot, and you could clearly see rustiness and fitness wise, he just wasn't there. Like, it would have nearly been better to throw him on for the final 5, or throw him in injury time, even just for 1 or 2 minutes. You might get like a bit of a adrenaline rush out of him there. But yeah, I think Clare, like, after the goal went in, it was almost like Clare's defence all started joining the attack, and they all just start shooting from mad angles. I think they did panic a little bit because they'd such a comfortable lead, and all of a sudden then they just fell apart. And I think there is that aura about Limerick as well, though. Like, and I think it is quite similar to many other great teams, like the Kilkenny Hurlers, the Kerry footballers, obviously from the 70s. You're looking at, or from the 80s, I should say, you're looking at the great Dublin team, obviously, recently as well. Like, when games are in the melting pot, like, you really have to put them to absolute bed. And Clare probably should have been 12 or 15 points up rather than 9 points up. And maybe then that would have killed the game. But yeah, I think it was a mix of things. I think it was a mix of Limerick stepping up, but I also think Clare massively panicked when that goal went in, because they were in the driving seat for so long, and then all of a sudden it was a 3-point game and it was in the melting pot. And I think there was a huge amount of panic, I think, across the squad.
I asked Seamus this last week about Tony Kelly. Would he start this game? He obviously came on against Limerick. Would you start Tony Kelly in this game against Cork, considering the importance of this?
I wouldn't, to be honest, because I think Clare have shown enough throughout the league that they don't necessarily need him to come in and start. Like, Aidan McCarthy's been absolutely phenomenal on frees all year. He's really kind of taken up the hold of being Clare's sort of top performer, top player. You've got Mark Rogers, you've got Shane O'Donnell obviously in there as well, Davy Fitzgerald. So I think you've got enough there still, in my opinion, to go and win the game. Like, let's not forget, they were 9 points up before Tony Kelly came on. Now, I'm not saying Tony Kelly came on and that's the reason why they lost. Obviously, that's completely not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that Clare were looking so good before he did come on. So that shows just how good that they can be even without him. It depends on his fitness, really. Like, obviously, Brian Lohan will know that a lot more than ourselves. But I'd probably throw him on for the final 20 minutes, maybe. I think he could make more of an impact there, I think. But I think starting him maybe would be a little bit risky, because even in the Limerick game, like, he took over a few frees towards the end and missed them. Do you know, that way? Like, I think because he is such a high profile player, if he's on the pitch, then Aidan McCarthy's off the frees, Tony Kelly's back on them. But Tony Kelly hasn't been playing high pressure inter-county hurling so far this year. So there could be an element of rustiness there, where that rustiness is not there with Aidan McCarthy. So yeah, I wouldn't start him personally.
And just before we get on to a prediction on Cork, actually, their second half shooting accuracy was 89%, compared to the first half was 50%. So do you think Cork, is it crucial for them just to start where they left off really against Waterford at the shooting stakes? Because if they shoot badly in the first few minutes, the game could be gone for them. And I think, honestly, Clare are a better team than Waterford. So, like, it's crucial really for Cork to start as they need to go on really throughout the game, rather than just picking it up in the last few minutes.
100%, yeah, because like, the first half was woeful. Like, the amount of chances they were missing. They were snatching at shots as well. Like, they were taking shots from positions where you're less likely to score from. They weren't trying to work the ball inside. There was no, like, as I was saying, there was no structure with Cork's play. It was just very erratic and all over the place a little bit. So like, they need to start fast, because obviously, like, being in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, majority of the home crowd will be behind Cork. Obviously, Clare do bring their numbers, so there'll no doubt be tons of Clare fans obviously in the stadium as well. But I think, like, Clare will be coming into this vulnerable. So, like, if Cork can start fast, get an early goal, put out a bit of a marker and show that they mean business, then Clare could wilt. They really could wilt and fall apart. And I think Cork need to put themselves in that position, because the opposite could happen as well, and Clare could come flying out of blocks, and then Cork are chasing it. So, I think the first 10 minutes, like, Cork really need to come out of blocks, and, like, they have the players to do it. Like, Alan Connolly's been sensational, like 7 goals obviously in his last 3 games. You're probably looking for more from Conor Lahan and Seamus Harnedy, Patrick Horgan maybe as well. So Cork have the talent, they have the players. There's no doubt about it. I think they just need to show it.
What would you be backing for this game, so Clare or Cork, to win this crucial encounter?
Yeah, I've gone for a draw. I'm sitting on that fence for this one. I think I've got a feeling Cork will build up a lead, and Clare will just slowly come back into it and manage to dig out a draw. But it really could go either way going down the home stretch. And as I said, I think if Cork lose, I think they're gone, just with the fact they play Limerick next. If Clare lose, they're not entirely gone, because they have Waterford and they also have Tipperary. And, like, if they beat Waterford, then they jump above them in the head-to-head. So they're not entirely gone. But at the same time, you're cutting it short then, and any chance of winning Munster is definitely gone for either side who loses this. So, I'll go for a draw.
Crucial. It's a big one to call, no doubt about it. Denise comments here, this is definitely a must-watch game for me. It may as well be winner takes all. It absolutely is, no doubt about it. I'm going to go for Clare to win this game. I know it's crucial for Cork to do it, but I just feel Clare, there's still some good players in that team. They were better than Limerick for 60 minutes and then dropped the ball in the last 10 minutes. For Cork, in the first half against a Waterford team that has struggled in the league and have struggled in Munster over the last few seasons, it hasn't been good enough from a Cork point of view. So, yeah, I'm going to back Clare to go on and win this game, but it is a must-watch, definitely, if anybody has the GA Go subscription or can go down to Super Valley Páirc Uí Chaoimh on Sunday. The other game isn't as cutthroat, but it is a crucial game nonetheless. Limerick against Tipperary at the Gaelic grounds on Sunday at 4 p.m. This game is live on RT2. It is live on national television. Like, Limerick won their game the last day. A performance is probably what John Kiley's looking for, because it just wasn't good enough against Clare the last day. They turned up in the last 10 minutes and then absolutely pulled it out of the bag. For Tipperary, it's their first game in the Munster Championship this year. It's a crucial game for them, a chance to start off with a win. So do you think Tipperary could shock Limerick, particularly after Tip drew against Limerick in the Championship last season?
I can't see it, to be honest with you. I think Limerick will come flying out of the gates here. I think after beating Clare with the way that they did, the confidence that would have gave the team, like that game versus Clare was the best case scenario for John Coyley and for Limerick, because like for the opening 55 minutes, they were very, very poor, as we very well know. And then they obviously went on an absolute rampage and turned it around. But they would have been able to go into training and be like, well, we played really badly for 55 minutes. And John Coyley and Paul Kinnerk, the management team, I'm sure, would have been able to break it all down and say, this is where it went wrong and this can't happen again. Because if it happens again, you will get beat. You know, don't get me wrong, Limerick have made a real habit of coming from behind in big pressure games. But there, you know, there's only so much you can get away with that, though. At some point, that could come back to bite you, and you could get beat. And i.e. Limerick against Kilkenny in 2019 is a game that stands out there, where they went really far behind. Now they nearly came back, but they still did lose that game. So I just can't see it, like, especially following on from what was a very abject performance versus Kilkenny as well. You know, like, and you saw what happened when Cian Lynch moved back into his best position in its centre forward. Like, Limerick just totally dominated from there on in. So, you know, like, and even towards the end, Galan coming into the game, Hegarty looking like his old self as well. And for Tipperary, obviously not having played a game, like, Limerick have the momentum. Tipperary don't really have that. It's in the Gaelic grounds as well. So I think Limerick will come flying out of traps. They'll probably go 6 or 7 points early on. And I think they'll manage the game after that. Tipperary might come back a little bit here and there and make something out of it, but I do think it'll be a relatively comfortable win for Limerick.
Look at the record in the Gaelic grounds, the championship between the two sides. Actually, since 2007, Limerick have only lost once to Tipperary in the Gaelic grounds, and that was 2015. They lost 4-23 to 116, and that was the year Limerick obviously lost to Dublin that season. So, like, Limerick weren't at their best that time, no doubt about it. And Tip definitely took advantage of it. But Tip's record at the Gaelic ground since that year, 2007, has been absolutely horrendous. So, like, is there an onus there for Liam Cahill's side to right those wrongs as well, to go to the Gaelic grounds and beat Limerick potentially? Because, like, if you are to win an All-Ireland, which Tipperary is obviously aiming to do, which Liam Cahill is aiming to do, is beating Limerick in the Gaelic grounds is a statement of intent to win that Liam McCarthy Cup?
Absolutely, yeah. Like, and you know, that's why Liam Cahill left Waterford to go to Tipperary. You know, like, he nearly won an All-Ireland with Waterford. He done a great job with Waterford, obviously, getting them to an All-Ireland final and getting them to a Munster final and everything else. And he obviously won an under-20 All-Ireland with Tipperary. So he doesn't jump ship back to his native county if he doesn't feel that there isn't an All-Ireland in the group. So it's absolutely massive. And look, Liam Cahill, to be fair, of all the top managers, probably has been the one who's given John Coyley the most amount of headaches. When you actually think about it, like, Tipperary drew obviously last season. With now, I know he hasn't beaten John Coyley in Limerick. Obviously, Brian Lohan has in that round robin game last year. But you know, his sides have often come very, very close and often haven't been too far away from Limerick. You know, and like, look, they do have some quality players. Like, Gerard O'Connor is obviously in phenomenal form. Jason Ford, Jake Morris, two of the best hurlers, obviously, on any given day. So, look, they'll make a game of it, and they won't bow down, and they won't get absolutely hammered or roll over. I just think Limerick's momentum that they'll be carrying coming into this, considering how slow they've started the last couple of games, I just think they're going to come flying out of the traps. And given that Tipperary haven't played a game in Munster, obviously, yet, like, they had the bye week last week, I don't think that favours them either, because I think it will take them a while to get up to the pace of the game, in my opinion.
And what about Limerick? Like, is it crucial for them to win a second game in a row, and the performance more than anything, because obviously they were off colour a bit against Clare last time out. Like, what do you think John Coyley would be looking for this game? Will he be just looking to get a result, get 2 wins on the bounce, and move on to the next game? Or will he be looking for his players to produce a performance? Because the performance the last day, yes, Limerick might improve later on in the summer, but that probably won't be good enough to get the 5 in a row in the end.
Yeah, I think he'd be looking for a performance as much as the result, in all honesty, because losing to Kilkenny, and then obviously, as we said, for large parts against Clare, they were very abject. I think they'll be looking at it and thinking we need to put in a big performance in here. We need to put in a performance worthy of 70 minutes. And I think as well, like, you've got lads knocking on the door, like Donnacha O'Donnell comes on, gets obviously a goal. You've got Adam English, who was very good when he came on as well. So you've got lads knocking on the door, and you've probably got some players who haven't really been performing to their absolute best so far for Limerick. So I think that will be a big thing. And I know John Coyley and the Limerick team, like, they always talk about the group and the players and their panel and how important that panel is. So I think that will be so crucial. And will be interesting to see, does the likes of Adam English, Donnacha O'Donnell, like, do they come in? Do they start? Like, that's going to be the interesting part.
Definitely is, no doubt about it. So you'll be back at the Limerick to win this game, but for Tipperary, like they do have good forwards. It is kind of frustrating from their point of view. They have Jake Morris, Mark Keogh, Alan Tynan, Gerald O'Connor, there are Jason Ford. There are impressive Tipperary players, Connor Stakeliff as well. There are some very good players in the Tipperary team. What would be a success for them this year? Would it be just to get out of Munster, get to an All-Ireland semi-final, or to win the Liam McCarthy? What do you think would be a success for Liam Cattle's?
I think getting out of Munster would be a step in the right direction, but I do think, like, it depends obviously on what happens in the Leinster final and who they obviously would end up playing in a quarter final. But I could look at Galway, and I think Galway are very beatable in my opinion. I don't really think they've improved under Henry Shefflin, and we'll get onto them maybe in a moment. But I think if Tipperary can get out of Munster, then for me they can beat Galway in a quarter final. Now, provided obviously Tipperary and Galway win their games against the Joe McDonagh Cup teams, which you'd imagine they probably would. But I could see them beating Galway, and I think getting to an All-Ireland semi-final is very, very possible for Tipperary. And then after that, it's a bonus, because that would be progress, because, like, you do have to remember, much like Cork, it is a very young Tipperary team. Like, they have had a good turnover of players since their last All-Ireland win in 2019. So I think that would be the big focus.
Definitely with the youngsters there, Tipperary, and they do have some excellent jump players there. But yeah, I'd back Limerick as well to win this game. Maybe, as Denise said earlier, up to the third quarter will be competitive, but then Limerick will stroll away to victory after that, and Tipperary will just focus on the next games after the Limerick game. A different kind of prediction here from Evelyn. This is a sending off for Garrett Haggerty written all over it. I don't know about that. Maybe he'll go in a bit of a fight with Roland Barr. I don't know what you think of that yourself, Aaron. Will he get sent off in this game?
Yeah, I mean, it's usually against Clare he gets sent off, isn't it? So he didn't get sent off in the Clare game. Yeah, fair enough. I was listening to one of his interviews on the GA hour earlier in the week. Actually, I thought it was a really, really good interview. Like, he, it was one of them interviews where he didn't hold back, and he was kind of laying it all out there, and everything else. But yeah, like, I don't know. To be honest, I don't think he will get sent off, because it's kind of happened a lot with him. So I don't think he will. But yeah, famous last words.
Yeah, we'll have to see on Sunday definitely about that kind of prediction. But we'll move on to the Leinster Senior Hurling Championship now. It is Galway against Kilkenny on Sunday at 2 p.m. on RT2. And yeah, this is an interesting one, particularly the last time they faced each other at Pearse Stadium. We remember what happened. Actually, I had to look up the results last time that happened. I rarely recognised Galway actually won the game, because the most headlines was actually the handshake with Henry Shefflin and Brian Cody. This time it's Derek Ling in the dugout, not Brian Cody, the legendary Kilkenny manager. So what do you think of this game in particular? Like, last year was a bit of shadow boxing in Nolan Park, ended up in a draw before. Inevitably, I think both these sides will be in the Leinster final. So what do you expect to go to this game? Do you think it'll be an exciting one, or do you think both sides will be like holding back a bit before the inevitable Leinster final?
Yeah, like, I think it is a bit of a non-contest in some ways, because you don't really want to give too much away with the fact that there is a strong possibility both of these two will end up in a Leinster final. Now, it's obviously not a guarantee, but I think it is very likely. Like, they are the two best teams in the Leinster Championship. There's no doubt about that, and they should both get to the final. Like, obviously, Kilkenny will be coming in with a couple of injuries. Adrian Mullen, Owen Cody, possibly no Owen Murphy as well. Even if they were fit, Will they start? Possibly not, because there's actually no rush to play them. So maybe if a player like Billy Drennan, maybe, who comes in, it's kind of a free hit in some ways. Like, I don't think you want to give a huge amount away, because again, the Leinster final is on the cards. You feel like it's more important for Galway to win it than Kilkenny to win it, just so Galway can get themselves a big win so far this year, and they can kind of silence the doubters a little bit, and then sort of, psychologically as well, it could be huge. But I fancy Kilkenny, to be honest with you. Even with some of those players being out missing, I just haven't really been hugely impressed by Galway this year. Like, I thought they struggled for large parts to put away Carlow. They did all right in the league, to be fair. Like, even though they didn't get to the league semi-finals, I think they won three games. They actually done all right there, in fairness. But I don't know. I think aside from Conor Wheel and Conor Cooney, they don't really have a lot of very good forwards, and I do think they are very beatable. And I think out of the top Munster sides and the top Leinster sides, I don't think Galway are quite where they would want to be under Henry Shefflin. And I do think Kilkenny have a lot more depth in their panel, and I think even with key players missing, I think they should still have enough to win it, in my opinion.
It's interesting you mentioned the fact that Galway need to win more than Kilkenny, because if you look at the last few meetings again from Know the Game on that website, Galway have won one out of their last 5 championship meetings, and that was the game with the handshake, Henry Shefflin and Brian Cody in 2022. They lost in 2020 in Croke Park, lost again in Croke Park at the Leinster final, drew last year at Nolan Park, and then lost through that Killy Buckley late goal in Croke Park where they nearly beat Kilkenny. So, like, that is a very good point, actually, Aaron, that you made. It is more important for Galway to go on and win this game because of the record that they have against Kilkenny, and maybe as well to show that they are actually no pushovers in Leinster, and they are a serious side in potentially getting the All-Ireland title, because Galway haven't won a Leinster title since 2018. They haven't won an All-Ireland since 2017. So maybe it's time for them to step up. But this game might be the start of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and when you look at it, like, I was looking at it, I think since they moved over to Leinster, I think they've only won the Leinster title 2 or 3 times. Like, that probably hasn't really gone the way Galway would have hoped. Like, they obviously won that All-Ireland in 2017, but given the talent and players that they had, they probably haven't quite, like, because I remember when they won that All-Ireland in 2017, and you were looking at Kilkenny, who were in massive transition, and everybody thought Galway were going to go on and dominate, maybe a bit like Limerick have in many ways. Galway, the young enough team, and it just never really transpired, and in the end quite fizzled out. And now it's some of those players are still there, but there's obviously a lot of fresher players in there as well. So it'd be absolutely huge for Galway to win the game and put down a marker. And there are younger lads in that side. I know obviously they beat Kilkenny or not last year, but in that game in Pearse Stadium. So there probably are some Galway lads there that do have a championship win over Kilkenny. But I think a win, but a significant win, will be huge. But then the problem is as well is that if you give away too much, Kilkenny might be more wide to that in a potential Leinster final. So yeah, it is an interesting dynamic. I would agree with Denise. I think a draw does look very, very likely. I'd probably edge it to Kilkenny, but again, you wouldn't be surprised if this was a draw.
And again, you make a good point about Kilkenny basically not giving too much away to Galway. And Galway have probably the more capabilities to give stuff away on Sunday because they have all their players there. Kilkenny, as you mentioned there, don't have Mullen, they don't have Owen Cody, possibly not Owen Murphy either. Will TJ Reid play with the long season ahead? I'm not entirely sure either. So is there more scope for Kilkenny to rotate more than Galway in this game, do you think? Because of the injuries and because of the young players coming in, like Owen Wall, for example, from O'Loughlin Gale, scored 2-2 in the last game against Antrim. Like, is there more scope for Kilkenny to bring in these players, these fringe players, for this game, considering there's no pressure on them, really?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think Kilkenny have probably been better than Galway at that over the last 3-4 years in terms of bringing in young players. Like, Galway have obviously introduced a few new lads here and there, like Tom Monaghan, Evan Nyland, Brian Concannon, these lads, but they probably haven't, maybe aside from Evan Nyland, they probably haven't really set the world alike in the same way that the likes of Billy Drennan and the likes of Owen Wall, like you said, who've obviously come into this Kilkenny side and really sort of laid down a massive marker. So yeah, there could be rotation. You'd probably expect that there will be, given a few of Kilkenny's injuries. At the same time, I think TJ Reid will play. I think some of the other key players will be in there as well. And yeah, I think Kilkenny just, like, because that's the thing with Kilkenny, sometimes in these games, you'll take one or two key players out and the whole structure of Kilkenny's play doesn't really change and everything just looks like it still slots also perfectly together. Whereas when you take a Conor Whelan out Galway, I don't think it's the same for Galway. Their forwards then really struggle. So yeah, I think there might be a little bit of rotation, but I'd still expect players like TJ Reid and whatnot to play.
So you'll be going for Kilkenny winning this game. It's in Galway as well, and just for context, there's only been 2 games in Galway between the two sides of the championship, and Galway have won both. So will Kilkenny win their first championship game in Pearse Stadium, do you think?
I think so, yeah. I think it'll only be by a point. When you look through recent meetings, there has actually been very little between these two. Like even in the Leinster final, there wasn't much. So like Galway, for as much as they have been disappointing for large parts, in my opinion, this year and over the last few seasons, they still do give a good game to Kilkenny. They do still put it up to them. So I would go with a point victory, but I still think Kilkenny will just nick it.
I'm going to go for Galway in this game, and maybe a few reasons. I do think Kilkenny will be better as the summer goes on, no doubt about it. I agree with you on Galway. I think they're very inconsistent. But number one, the game's in Pearse Stadium, and number two, Galway have more players fit and available for them. But later in the season, I do think Kilkenny will win the Leinster final. So, to be honest, I don't think it would mean much other than confidence for Galway, in all honesty. Just before we leave this game, Jack asked a bit of a random question from him. Here, who do you think is a hidden rising star for Kilkenny? It's a tough one. I suppose Timmy Clifford, Jordan Malloy, Owen Wall, as we mentioned there. What do you think yourself, Aaron, of that question?
Yeah, I suppose, like, from what I've seen anyway, like, and we wouldn't watch Kilkenny under 20s like week in, week out, so it'd be very hard to know all the top players coming through. But yeah, Owen Wall, but probably Billy Drennan, to be fair. And I know maybe he's not a hidden rising star now. Like, he obviously was in the team last year. He's a regular in the team this year. But in terms of like great players who've come through Kilkenny, like TJ Reid, Owen Cody, from what I've seen of Billy Drennan, I think he has all the makings of becoming that type of player, considering he's only like 19, 20. So yeah, probably go for him as like a rising star.
Yeah, it's an interesting enough question, because neither of us are obviously from Kilkenny, so we wouldn't have seen under 20s and minors and stuff like that. But moving on to the other Leinster games, and another game that's live on GA Go, it's Antrim against Wexford on Saturday at 3 p.m. in Corrigan Park. Antrim getting a bit of a pasting last week, in all honesty, against Kilkenny, and that will knock their confidence. But speaking of not confidence, Wexford, after being so clear in the game against Dublin, they throw away a 5-point lead in the last 2 minutes. Dublin scored 2 goals. Draw game, and that will knock the stuffing out of Wexford. I'd imagine later on down the season that they didn't get that win over Dublin, but you'd have to expect Keith Roster's men to win this game, especially given Antrim's form at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, like it was mad, all right. Like, looking at the highlights of that game and everything else, I conceding the 2 late goals towards the end when Wexford looked so comfortable. Like, they do, as it's been pointed out, they do seem very vulnerable to high balls in around the square. That's how Dublin got both of their goals. That's how Westmeath did a huge amount of damage against them last year. It's probably something they obviously still haven't quite ironed out. But in saying that, look, Antrim have had a huge turnover of players this year. 30-point defeat to Kilkenny, like, that's not going to do them any favours. Wexford have been susceptible to a few shocks in the last few years, but you couldn't see it here. I think it would be very comfortable for Wexford. I'll go with 12 points, but honestly, if this was 20 plus, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I think Wexford want to win this game as well. And before we move on to the other games, actually interesting stat here. This will be the first meeting as far as know the game is concerned on the internet there, that the game will be on at Corrigan Park for these two sides. So it's the first time travelling to Corrigan Park for the Wexford team. This is games going back to 1954. So like, that's quite a novel stat there. Wexford travelling up to Corrigan Park. And remember, Corrigan Park in the league, they drew. So Is there
Yeah.
hope for Antrim there? I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. All right, it was like, yeah, first time in the championship. But I remember obviously that league game a couple of years ago where it was a draw. But like that was a different Antrim team though. Like that was an Antrim team with Neil McManus, with a good few other stars in there as well. Like Wexford were probably better back then as well, you would argue. But no, I unfortunately, look, I'd love to see Antrim do something as a neutral, but I couldn't see it.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see, no doubt about it. So just thought I'd bring that up there. Look at the stadiums and stuff like that. It's quite an interesting one there that I just realised. And moving on to the last Leinster Championship game, it is Carlow against Dublin on Saturday at 6 p.m. Just as a Dublin fan yourself, Aaron, Carlow did very well against Galway the last day. They were within 4 points until Conor Cooney scored a goal in around the 53rd, 54th minute. Dublin drew obviously against Wexford, a confidence booster for them, and no doubt about it. But this will be a tough game because Carlow will want to win this game, and they'll be buoyed to go on and win this game against a Dublin side that would be considered the lower tier on the side of Wexford, Galway, and Kilkenny. So it's a big opportunity for Carlow to cause a shot, possibly.
Yeah, look, I mean, when they would have targeted this game, there's no doubt about it. I think when the fixtures came out, they would have looked at a few games. Where are we going to get points? Dublin at home, maybe Antrim on the final day in Corrigan Park. So look, it's an opportunity for Carlow. There's no doubt about it. Like they came within 11 points of Galway, 4 points at one stage after about 50 minutes. Dublin have been very vulnerable this year. They got out of jail probably against Wexford with those 2 late goals. Otherwise, they were heading for a comfortable defeat. It's hard to know if they have improved under Micheál Donoghue. I feel like Dublin are just very static at the moment. The younger players don't seem to be able to be getting a chance, you know, and look, fair play to lads like Danny Sutcliffe who are still knocking about and still doing the business. And he obviously got one of the late goals the last day. But look, it's an opportunity for Carlow, but I think it's really important for Dublin to get the win and to I think getting the win first of all is the most important thing. Making it comfortable then would be huge as well, just in terms of you don't know how important score difference could be. Score difference has come back to haunt Dublin in the past. So yeah, you would be looking at it and thinking a win is the most important thing. But if we do have the chance to win by 6 or 7 or more, that would be very important. But I think all in all for Dublin, you know, like, because if they weren't to get out of this, if they were to drop points or lose this game, you know, I think there'd be a lot of negativity around Dublin hurling if that was the case. So you would expect Dublin to get over the line. But look, it is one of them games that Carlow maybe can potentially cause an upset.
Maybe so, and it would be actually Carlow's first ever win over Dublin in the championship if they were to do it on Saturday. But to be honest, like Dublin seemed to be, after that late comeback against Wexford, seemed to be on a bit of a confidence trajectory, in fairness to them. Carlow, like Martin Kavanagh, will be massive for them. John Nolan as well. They played well against Galway, but they'll have to produce an excellent performance here to beat a decent enough Dublin side. So I predict Dublin to go on and win the game as well. And just before we get to the football lower tier competitions, we'll start off with the Joe McDonagh Cup. And just on a side note, all the Joe McDonagh Cup games are live on Clubber this weekend, which is absolutely brilliant to see, including this one, Offaly against Westmeath on Saturday at 3 p.m. And both sides lost their opening game last weekend. You would imagine the loser of this has no chance of going back up to the Leinster Championship. So it's a big game for both sides here.
Absolutely, yeah. It's completely huge for both teams. You know, like a win for either one of them puts them. It's a bit like the Cork-Clare game, maybe to a certain extent, in the sense that you lose this and you know you're chasing massive ground. Obviously, there is more games to play. Like you still have 3 more matches after this, but yeah, it's huge, absolutely huge. Like Offaly conceded a couple of late goals against Laois, a game they were very much in control in. Westmeath, you were shocked really that they lost to Kerry. You couldn't really believe that, considering they were playing in Division 1. I'd fancy Offaly though, I think, to win this. You know, players like Adam Screeney, Killian Sampson, Owen Cahill have all looked very impressive. For Westmeath, like I do think it's an interesting one, and I was kind of looking at some stats on this earlier. Like teams who've played in Division 1 and in the Leinster Championship, in particular the Leinster Championship, and been relegated, have very rarely ever came back up and tend to really struggle. Like look at Laois over the last couple of years. Offaly got relegated from Leinster, went straight down to the Christie Ring. You've obviously got Carlow, who were in Leinster a good couple of years ago, and look how long it's taken them to bounce back. And maybe a similar trend could be happening with Westmeath. Albeit it looks like they have made significant progress over the last couple of years, but a defeat here definitely sets them back. And yeah, I'd probably fancy Offaly by 1 or 2 to win it, I think.
I'll go for Offaly as well. It's probably just a case of Offaly played well against Laois, but were pipped with 2 late goals from Paddy Purcell, and Laois got over the line. And Laois are a decent side, we'll get on to Laois now in a sec, but Westmeath losing to Kerry at home, particularly in Mullingar. Like, that was a big one to take for Westmeath, I'd imagine, but I predict Offaly to go on and win this game as well. And moving on to the other 2 games, we'll actually start off with Kerry against Down. That's on Sunday at 1 p.m. because both sides won their game in match day 1. So whoever wins this may have eyes on promotion rather than relegation. So it's a big game actually between both sides, with no pressure really on them, because both sides would have been predicted to be at the lower end of the Joe McDonagh Cup table rather than at the top end.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and I think for Kerry, like if they put back-to-back wins together, then all of a sudden they've a huge opportunity and a huge chance to get into a Joe McDonagh Cup final. And like Down are a strange one. Like they do tend to pull off big wins and big upsets. They've beaten Kerry obviously in the past, like in recent years. It's not a foregone conclusion just because Kerry beat Westmeath. Like obviously Maurice O'Connor has been outstanding there for Kerry. Like he's been one of their standout players. I would fancy Kerry. I think to carry on the momentum. I think you beat Westmeath away. You know, like you surely then have to carry that momentum into a home fixture against Down. And there is an opportunity here for Kerry, looking at the fixtures, to potentially put themselves in a very, very good position by the time they play Offaly and Laois. So yeah, I'd fancy Kerry to go and get the win.
Yeah, I'd say Kerry will go on and get the win as well. And Shane Conway being out for them, Mikey Boyle obviously retiring. Maurice O'Connor really stepped up the last day for Kerry, so I'd expect Kerry to win the game. And Down won the game last time, but it was against a Meath team that are probably on the lower end and going to probably down to the Christy Ring Cup. So there was a bit of a difference between the 2 sides getting their wins the last day, and I think Kerry was more impressive, and I think they'll win, especially at home. Last game of the Joe McDonagh Cup of the weekend, it is Meath against Laois on Clubber 3 p.m. You would expect Laois to walk all over Meath. No disrespect, Meath, lower end of the table, probably going back down to the Christy Ring. Laois, after a brilliant start against Offaly last weekend, you'd expect Laois to win this game.
Absolutely, yeah. Like it should be a fairly foregone conclusion. Like maybe Kerry Down, you can see a surprise, or you could predict Offaly, Westmeath either way. But yeah, this should be very comprehensive for Laois, let's be honest, because like Meath unfortunately probably will be headed down to the Christy Ring. Like they do seem to be in a bit of a awkward position in hurling, in the sense that they seem to keep bouncing back up from Christy Ring to Joe McDonagh. Maybe they'll stay for a year in the Joe McDonagh, but just making that extra step just doesn't seem to quite be possible for Meath hurling right now.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult for Meath in this game, and I think Laois will go on and win this game as well. Just at the other 3 competitions, just briefly, and the Christy Ring Cup, you have London against Wicklow, Kildare against Derry, and Sligo against Tyrone. So London and Kildare are looking for their 3rd wins in a row in that competition, and both sides are at home, so you'd expect them to win those games. In the Nicky Rackard Cup, you have Louth against Mayo, Donegal against Monaghan, and Armagh against Roscommon. So interesting games there. And the Laurie Bar Cup finally, you have Longford against Leitrim, Lancashire against Cavan, and Warwickshire against Fermanagh. So some interesting hurling this weekend, I'd imagine. So that's the hurling wrapped up. We'll move on to the football, and we'll start off with probably the game that doesn't decide Sam Maguire and Taunton Cup in per se, but this is the most intriguing game of the weekend, no doubt about it. It is Donegal against Tyrone in the Ulster quarter or semi-final on Sunday at 2 p.m. on BBC Two Northern Ireland. Donegal really, really good the last day, put away Derry really well, with those goals, especially the Jamie Brennan goal of the last day. And Jim McGuinness, it seems like Jimmy's winning matches is trending once again this week, but there is the caveat. Tyrone, they have performed badly so far, in my opinion, probably in your opinion as well, Aaron, this year in the league and the championship. But they always, no matter, form goes out the window here, because Tyrone nearly always come up with a plan to derail a party. So can Tyrone beat Donegal this weekend?
Yeah, look, I mean, Tyrone are the type of side that would go and win this game. You know, like the Tyrone of a couple of years ago, you could see it happening, given the fact that Jim McGuinness has this extraordinary record against Mickey Hart, and obviously 3 of those 4 wins against Mickey Hart were against Tyrone. And now that Mickey Hart isn't there, this is when Tyrone go and beat Donegal. It would be the most Tyrone thing ever to actually go and win this and go on and win Ulster. And they'll probably be happier playing Donegal than Derry, in all honesty, given how comfortably Derry have beaten Donegal or beaten Tyrone in recent years. It's interesting. Like, Tyrone obviously beat Donegal in the preliminary round game last year. That was the most recent meeting between the two. It was a comfortable enough win that day for Tyrone, albeit this Donegal team has changed completely since then. Like, Donegal were beaten in Ulster last year by Down, and no disrespect to Down, but like, it is kind of mad to see how that's changed and everything else, like, and to see how quickly Donegal have changed their form. But yeah, look, Donegal will be carrying a huge amount of momentum. There'll be an element of pressure there. I think they'll be slightly favourites. I wouldn't say heavy favourites, but marginally favourites. Be interesting to see what happens with Sean Patton. He went off injured the last day versus Derry. Does he come back in? That could be absolutely huge. Does Patrick McBurty come back in? That's an interesting talking point as well. But all in all, Donegal have more than enough. And like, one thing that really impressed me against Derry was they never tired. They kept on going, and like, the way they moved the ball, the way they transitioned from defense to attack was incredible to see at the best of times. And like, will Tyrone be able to live with that? I'm not so sure, to be honest with you. Tyrone's overall play is very all over the place at best of times. They have great patches in games, and then they'll go completely missing in games as well. So, like, I think Tyrone have what it takes most definitely to make a game out of this, but I think Donegal's game plan and the way they'll approach it will just be too much, I think, for Tyrone. I don't think Donegal will win it as convincingly as they beat Derry, but I do think it still will be a Donegal victory, and probably by 3 or 4.
Would you go along with my points that Tyrone have been very disappointing this season? When you look at the league campaign at the Ulster Championships, the fact that they threw away a 6-point lead against Cavan. Mm-hmm. Do you think Tyrone have been as bad as many people, including myself, have made out this season?
Yeah, I think they've been very poor, really, since they won the All-Ireland in 2021. Like, they haven't put a consistent run together of 2, 3, 4 wins. And like, if you actually look at their championship record since they won the All-Ireland in 2021, like in 2022, they beat Fermanagh in the opening game. They then got hammered by Derry, and then they got hammered by Armagh in the qualifiers. Last year, it was a little bit better, but they got beat by Monaghan first day out in Ulster. Then obviously in the group stages they had a decent win against Armagh, but then obviously lost to Galway, and then barely got that draw against Westmeath to put them through to the knockout rounds. Beat Donegal in a good performance, then got absolutely trashed by Kerry, and then against Cavan, comfortable. And then they throw the game away, and then all of a sudden it's and I know there was a black card and everything else that maybe played a big part in that, but they still end up going into extra time, and they still do enough to win the game. But you just never know what you're going to get with Tyrone. You just don't know what you're going to get. Like, talent-wise, they've lots of very good players in Dara Canavan, in Darren McCurry, but it just seems to be a little bit all over the place in terms of how they play. There doesn't seem to be much structure as to how they play. It's kind of just free reign in terms of how their games are. They never seem to have any control on any games. It just seems to be a little bit all over the place. So whereas Donegal are the complete opposite, do you know what I mean? So yeah, like, I think, yeah, it just hasn't looked good for Tyrone, and I think Donegal will beat them.
Yeah, like, Donegal look very good at the moment. Denise is commenting here about Tyrone. Tyrone are just it's such a mixed bag. I don't think any of their opposition will ever know what Tyrone will be showing up on the day. Yeah, it's a difficult one with Tyrone, really. What they will show up and what they won't show up, that's no doubt about it. But Donegal, they've been unbeaten in the league and the championship this season. Like, they've been absolutely exceptional in the game against Derry the last day. They were just smart more than anything they spotted a weakness in Derry's tactics in Mickey Hart's game plan and exploited it to a T. And as well as that, Jim McGuinness's record against Tyrone, as many people have documented throughout the week, has been very, very good as a manager. He's won 3 championship games out of 3 against Tyrone between 2011 and 2013. So, like, the guy's a genius, Jim McGuinness. And even I'm hearing in journalism lectures and just online in GA during the week, that Jimmy's winning matches is, going up the charts again. And why wouldn't it be? Because Donegal have been brilliant in the last few weeks.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, and I suppose for Donegal, like he is their messiah in many ways. He won the All-Ireland as a player in '92. He won an All-Ireland as a manager in 2012. Got them back to the All-Ireland final in 2014. And obviously since then, they haven't even got to an All-Ireland semi-final. And then, Derry, one of Donegal's big rivals, are dominating Ulster. They've won back-to-back Ulster titles. He comes in when Donegal are seemingly at their lowest point, wins the Division 2 title, and then beats Derry and beats them quite comfortably in their own backyard. It's so, I think they'll be singing his name from the rooftops of Donegal for quite some time. And I suppose it is one of them though where it's a great win and it's bragging rights, but ultimately in the grand scheme of things, right now it doesn't actually really mean anything as of now. Unless Donegal go on to win Ulster and have a great year, then they'll look back and think, what a win that was. It set the template and everything else. But in the grand scheme of things, like Derry aren't gone, they haven't gone anywhere. They'll be waiting in the trenches now for the group stages. So it doesn't, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't change anything. But at the same time, it was a massive, massive win for Donegal, especially psychologically, I think.
So, Carl, you're going to go for Donegal win here and Jim McGuinness to roll on to an Ulster final?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'd go 3 points. 3-point win, I think for Donegal.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Donegal as well to go on and win this game, and should be a very interesting game, no doubt about it, and definitely one to watch on Sunday. Just going back to the hurling, because there's been news here. Hurling 1, 2, 3, 4 has just said, Matthew, what do you make of the Cork team changes? I'm looking at it now, mate, here. So Declan Dalton's come in instead of Conor Lehan. Damien Cahallan's gone out of the team, and the full back line, Noel O'Leary's come back in there as well. Brian Hayes has come into the full forward line. Ethan Toomey's gone into midfield instead of Tommy O'Connell. So quite a few changes on the Cork team. So just to go back I know we're talking about football though, but just going back to that thing, Aaron, for a sec for Pat Ryan, that's a statement of intent if he's going to change literally most of the team. Like Damien Cahallan out of the team, Conor Lehan out of the team, Tommy O'Connell, Robbie O'Flynn's still on the bench, Shane Kingston is back at the bench but not starting, Mark Coleman's on the bench as well despite starting the last day. So is this a statement of intent for Pat Ryan?
It definitely is, yeah, but I do think that's been a common trend with Cork over the last couple of years though, and Kieran Kingston used to do this all the time where the team would change so much. I think it is a bit of a problem that Cork have so many talented hurlers in the county. Do you know what I mean? There's so much options. It means that even if things go wrong, Kieran Kingston in the past and obviously Pat Ryan now, they can just change the team very quickly. And it's one of them, we won't know obviously until the game whether they're the right decisions. But I do find it interesting, taking out Mark Coleman, I think is a very interesting one. Not starting him. Conor Lehan, fair enough, was sluggish enough the last day, so he's not in the side. Jack O'Connor isn't in the starting 15 either. I know he didn't start the last day either as well. He's a player that I think Cork could really do with, because in terms of his pace and energy and that he brings to Cork, he'd be such a huge player, but he doesn't seem to get a look in either. And I think we've both talked about Shane Kingston and how good he can be, but he rarely ever seems to get a look in either, which is a bit mad.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting team actually, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion on social media about the team. I think it's the right decisions from Pat Ryan, because it stamps his authority saying, lads, that wasn't good enough. I'm going to change the team now and see what happens against Clare on Sunday. So it's going to be an interesting one to find out, no doubt about it. And moving back to the football, we'll move on to 3 games that will decide Taunton Cup and Sam Maguire places. Denise actually asked, is Tuesday the group draws? Some people have asked me about this, when the group draws actually is. I don't know, do you know yourself, Aaron? I don't know when the group draws is. Is it Monday? Is it Tuesday? I don't know when it is, but I don't know. Do you know?
I've no idea, to be honest, but it could be next week, because I do remember last year they did it on the week in the build up to the provincial finals, didn't they? Because obviously they did it as Leinster winners and Munster runners up and all this crack. So yeah, I'd say it could be Monday, Tuesday. I don't know, it'd be great if they did a proper draw of this, but it's probably going to be on RT radio at 7:30 in the morning or something.
Yeah, I think it was a GA goal last year. That was
Oh, was
actually
it? Yeah,
quite an improvement. But
yeah. Oh,
RT Radio, you'd actually just hate getting up in the mornings, wouldn't you, for them draws? And it will happen. It will happen for the quarterfinals later on down the summer. But
yeah.
look, that's probably a discussion for another day. We will get on to the 3 games that will decide Sam Maguire Tailteann Cup placing. So before we get into our man down, just for our viewers or listeners to notice, 13 teams are confirmed for the Sam Maguire at this present moment in time, and only 3 spots remain in this. So the 6 teams competing for 3 spots are you have Offaly, Down, and Kildare, who are all playing this weekend to have to win to get Sam Maguire placings. And the 3 teams that are in Sam Maguire spots at the moment are Loud. They're playing Kildare this weekend, obviously. And the 2 sides that are playing, Cork and Westmeath. But for Cork, they need Dublin to beat Offaly. And I think you know what's going to happen in that game. We'll get on to that in a sec. But really, it's Westmeath and Loud that are in a predicament. But we'll start off with the Ulster semi-final here of Armagh against Down on GA Go at 5:15 on Saturday evening in Clonus. Like, this is an interesting game because Armagh and Down played each other last year. Armagh really beat them off the park in that particular game. But Down, they have improved in some aspects, but Armagh themselves have improved. You'd have to expect Armagh to win the game, but Down have to win to stay in the Sam Maguire Cup, and surely that will count for something on Saturday.
Yeah, I think the most important thing here for Down is just to make a game out of this. I think if they lose, it's not necessarily the end of the world. And I know, obviously, going into the Tailteann Cup, they want to get into that All-Ireland series and everything else. But they are a team that can go far in the Tailteann Cup. They proved that last year. They are a team that can win it. So there is also benefits, I think, to the Tailteann Cup as well for Down. But I do think at the same time, I think if they can make a game out of this, like we saw Cavan put up a great showing to Tyrone. We saw Sligo, what they done to Galway. We saw Cork would give Kerry quite a good run for their money. I think if Down can do something similar here, that will give them a lot of confidence that they are moving in the right direction, because they got absolutely hammered, obviously, by Armagh in the semi-finals last year. If it was to happen again, like, they are making progress. There's no doubt about that. And they've a young team and under 20 lads in there and everything else. But I think if they were, it's just one of them where I don't think it'd be tough for Conor Laverty to get the lads up for it again. I think if a year later or whatever. So I think there needs to be some sign of progress in this game. And it's hard to really see if there will be, because like, Down have improved, but they looked very poor against Antrim. They were very, very poor. Like, Antrim probably could have won that game. And we're talking about, on paper, arguably the worst team in Ulster or Antrim. And Down really struggled to put them away. Armagh have improved since last year. They've obviously had 1 or 2 setbacks here and there. But yeah, it's very, very hard to look past the 6 or 7 point win for Armagh.
Yeah, what do you think Armagh have improved on in particular going into the Ulster Championship? Because last season was nearly, like, they went into it with a bit of negativity, and obviously nearly won Ulster. They lost at the penalty shootout, and the fact that Donegal did beat Derry last weekend, do you think that will give Armagh a lot more confidence to go on and win the Ulster Championship, given that Derry are now out of it?
I think so, to a certain extent. Like, obviously the game against Derry was a draw essentially, and then it went to penalties last year, and there hasn't been much between Armagh and Derry in recent years. But yeah, like, I think for Armagh, like, it's a hard one. Like, in Division 2, they definitely let the shackles go a little bit more. Like, they played more free flowing attacking football. And I think when Armagh play like that, they have a lot of potential to beat teams. Like, I think they've got some of the best scoring forwards in the country: Rian O'Neill, Stephen Campbell, Rory Grugan, Conor Turbett. They've got a really good forward line there. They've got a really good base of forwards, and they can do a lot of damage to any team in the country. I think sometimes the problem with McGeeney and Armagh is they just overthink it. They overthink it against good games, far too cautious. Like against Monaghan last year, keeping the ball for large parts when there was opportunities to go on and win that game. So that probably is the problem with Armagh. But in this type of a game, they won't worry about that. They'll play their free-flowing football. And like what we saw last year against Down, they absolutely blew them away, So Armagh have the potential to do that, just like they done against Fermanagh. Like, they do have some very, very good natural forwards. And even some of the new players have been introduced, like Oisín Connaughty is an example. He's been very good. So, and Oisín O'Neill's obviously back in as well. So, yeah, I think Armagh, like their firepower has improved, the way of playing has improved. But again, you go back to how they played against Donegal when they looked very restricted in that match as well. So it's a hard one to judge Armagh at the moment.
He's definitely, and yeah, we're both probably predicting Armagh to go on and win the game, which would mean that Down will be in the Tailteann Cup. And myself and James actually had this discussion on Tailteann Cup Sam Maguire at deadline weekend or whatever it was last season as well. And we were mentioning about the fact that some teams are suited to the Sam Maguire, some teams are suited to the Tailteann Cup, some teams will feel they're aggrieved on not being in the Sam Maguire and will feel ashamed more than anything to be in the Tailteann Cup. What do you think the Down players will be feeling? Because we're both obviously predicting Armagh will win the game. Down will be in the Tailteann Cup. What do you think the Down camp will be thinking in going into the Tailteann Cup? Will they brace it like they did last season, or do they think to themselves, we should be in Sam Maguire? We're not going to put in an effort into this. But do you think Down will be happy to be in the Tailteann Cup or not?
I don't think they'll be happy necessarily, given the fact that they went all the way to the final last year. They obviously lost the final, but they're probably back to square one again. It doesn't really look like they're necessarily progressing. But at the same time, it's an opportunity to win a trophy. I think they're more than capable of doing it. They have the talent, they have the players. They've beaten, like they got promoted from Division 3. Maybe the only other team they'd be wary of is Westmeath potentially, depending on what obviously happens in the Louth Kildare game. But you would look at it and think Down have, in my opinion, what it takes to win that competition. They've more than enough quality. So I think for Down, it's not ideal in terms of progress, but it's still a very young team, and an opportunity to play in Croke Park for a semi-final and for a final could do them the world of good. And it's also an opportunity to guarantee an All-Ireland place for the following year, and I think that would be huge.
It definitely would, and Down would be massive favourites going to the Tailteann Cup along with the likes of Sligo, Fermanagh possibly as well. So yeah, Denise actually mentions here Sligo, huge Tailteann Cup contenders also, and they are, no doubt about it. It should be very interesting, the Tailteann Cup, and that draw should be made this week as well. So lots of exciting, stuff going into the summer, no doubt about it. Into the Leinster semi-finals, though, we'll start off with the one that is probably the most exciting and the one that's most difficult to call, and the one that will decide Sam Maguire Tailteann Cup placings ultimately. Kildare against Louth in the semi-final on Sunday, 1:45 on GA So we're predicting Armagh to win the game on Saturday, which will mean in a domino effect, Louth will be in the Sam Maguire Cup. That's provided, obviously, the Dublin beat Offaly, which, spoiler, they will, no doubt about it. But look at this game, Kildare and Louth. Kildare have to win to stay in the Sam Maguire Cup. This is a difficult one to call because Louth haven't beaten Kildare in the championship since 2010. Will this be the day that they right the wrong of that stat?
I think it has to be. I think it has to be for Louth. I think after all the progress they've made over the last couple of years, obviously Mickey Hart done a great job there, but clearly Louth have, their underage is going very strong. Like they're into a Leinster final. They beat Dublin the other week. So there is a lot of things that are going really well in Louth at the moment. And there's a lot of, and funny enough, Kildare have also had a lot of great underage success, but it doesn't really seem to be transitioning into their senior team. So I think it's there for Louth. I think this has to be the time where they beat Kildare in the championship. I think, to be fair, if they had played them in the championship last year, I reckon they would have beat them as well. They obviously beat them in the league this year, beat them in the league last year. So they're more than capable of beating this Kildare team. I do think there is a lot of fragility about this Kildare side. Like, talent-wise, they have, if you were to put the starting 15s of both Louth and Kildare and look at them, and, you've been watching football over the last, 10 years, you'd probably say Kildare maybe have a better starting 15 in terms of talent. But unfortunately, we just haven't seen that Kildare team play well really all year. Like they barely got over the line against Wicklow, who are a Division 4 side now. Fair enough, they were down to 14 men for the majority of the game. But even at that, I don't think Wicklow played at their best that day, if I'm being honest. They missed a lot of big chances, like that chance at the end from Matt Nolan. That goes over the bar. We're not speaking about Kildare. They're already in the Tailteann Cup, having lost every game in league and championship. So, Kildare have the ability to make a game out of it. They're obviously, probably quite familiar enough with Croke Park and everything else. I know Glenn Ryan doesn't like the music there, but to be fair, they're not playing Dublin, so at least that's something. But I think Louth, for me, the progress that they've made, I can see them winning it, but at the same time, I don't think it will be a hammering or anything like that. I think it'll be a 2-3 point win.
Yeah, it should be a very interesting one to call, no doubt about it. But similar question on what I asked about Down and Kildare. If they were the Tailteann Cup, do you think them players will be like, what's the point of being in this competition? The thing is, if they win on Sunday now against Louth, the whole world kind of turns around. And they'll think to themselves, they'll be a lot more positive going into the Sam Maguire Cup and thinking, this is where we should be. So it's a big game for Kildare. And there is the argument as well, from a Louth point of view. Yes, they'd want to beat Kildare for the first time in the championship since 2010. But also at the back of their minds, would they want to be in another Leinster final where they're inevitably going to get hammered by Dublin? That will downgrade their confidence going to the Sam Maguire. So do you think there's an element that Kildare would want this more than Louth on Sunday? I know with the record and all that, Louth would want it. But do you think Kildare would want it more?
I think they'll obviously want to right the wrongs of what has been a very poor year. Like, fair enough, if they do go into the Leinster final and they get hammered by Dublin, if they were to win on Sunday, it's a free hit against Dublin. Doesn't really matter what happens, in all honesty. You get hammered, whatever, it's cool. You go on to the group stages, where, to be fair, they proved last year they can be competitive there. They obviously got out of it last season, and were very close to beating Monaghan. So, like, nobody's saying that Kildare don't have the talent or don't have the players. Like, Dara Kirwan, Daniel Flynn, Jimmy Hoyland, 3 very, very good forwards. Kevin Feely has been Kildare's best player this year. He's been absolutely outstanding. Noel Kelly, who came in the last day, looked very good as well. So, like, they do have talent. There's a lot of talent within that county. We just haven't seen them able to produce it. And I think maybe it's down to coaching a little bit. It's very hard to know. But like, you would go with Louth. I do just think Louth overall are just a little bit more. They're a little bit more stronger. I think the big statistic as well is what Louth have scored 20 goals so far this year. And in what, 8-9 games, that's an average of 2 goals per game. Look how much goals Kildare have been conceding as well. So, goals could really be key here, and that could really be the difference, I think.
They could have easily conceded another goal against Wicklow later on as well, but for that ball trickling past the post. So yeah, it's a tough one to call. I think Louth have performed well, there's no doubt about it, throughout the year. I just feel that Kildare would want this more because of the Sam Maguire placings, and because they've had a wretched season. They'd want to get into that Leinster final. They'd want to get into the Sam Maguire. So I'm going to say Kildare will win this slightly by 1 or 2 points, I'd say, but it'd be very tight to call. So, like, according to your predictions there, you would think that Westmeath will be in the Sam Maguire Cup after all, despite losing to Wicklow. So will they be relieved more than anything that Kildare, according to your prediction there, will lose this game?
Yeah, I think they will be, because, I mean, they were in the Tailteann Cup, obviously, 2 years ago, won it. They were in the group stages last year, proved they could be competitive in it. They didn't win a game, but obviously they drew with Tyrone and, nearly beat Armagh, nearly beat Galway in what was a group of deaths. So yeah, to be very relieved, I think to be going into those group stages. Kind of, it would be a bit bizarre though, losing to a Division 4 side and then going into the All-Ireland series. But, Clare obviously beating one of the worst teams in the country and then going into the All-Ireland series. It is a little bit mad, the statistic, but to be fair to Westmeath, they were promoted out of Division 3 as champions, so they probably do deserve it, in fairness.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that will transpire Louth to Kildare on Saturday. And I'm saying that Louth will be in the Sam Maguire, no doubt about it, and Westmeath will be in according to your predictions are, because the next game, this is to decide who will be in the Sam Maguire Cup and who will be in the Tailteann Cup and who will be in the Leinster final. It is a mouth-watering tie, Dublin against Offaly, 21,000 at Croke Park, Sunday at 4 p.m. on GA Go. No, in all seriousness, Aaron, is there any need to discuss this game? Like, it's the first meeting decided since 2007. Offaly haven't beat Dublin since 1982 in the championship. That's the stats I can muster up in this game. But in all seriousness, this is going to be an absolute whitewash.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a little bit mental that this fixture is happening, but I suppose that is the Leinster Championship. Obviously, it's I suppose it was great for Offaly, obviously getting the win versus Laois. Good for Declan Kelly's men to get over the line and get a win and everything else. Much needed win, but yeah, no, it'll be very, very comfortable for Dublin. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what team Dublin put out. Do they put their best team out? Does Cluxton start? Does McCarthy, start? Does Fitzsimons start? It's going to be very interesting to see. Like Brian Fenton's obviously going to be back. He wasn't playing the last day. It's just one of them where Dublin can play very poorly. Offaly could play very well, but Dublin will probably still win very comfortably. That way. Like, I mean, the only maybe slight thing is a lot of these Offaly lads would have had a little bit of success against some of the Dublin under-20 players. But that's usually clutching at straws. You could say the same about the Kildare under-20s against Dublin and maybe even some of the Meath lads who were out there last week. So look, it'll be Dublin probably by 10-15, but it could be 20 plus. Even as a Dublin fan, I wouldn't want to see that in all honesty, but I think it could very well happen.
And the thing is, Declan Kelly's Offaly, so teams in under 20 and senior are more capable of playing attacking, free-flowing football than defensive football. So, to be honest, that is much more of a bad sign than a good sign that this could be an absolute whitewash. But a question about Dublin, because we both know Dublin are going to win this game. We're not going to go crazy predictions, outlandish here. But what will Dublin actually learn from this game? I know, again, clutching at straws here, but what will they actually learn going to this Leinster semi-final?
Nothing really, to be honest. Nothing really. Maybe I don't know. Maybe if Lorcan O'Dell plays or Ross McGarry plays, we know their form. Maybe if Cluxton plays again, we know it's another game back towards full fitness, because maybe he looked a little bit rusty the last day. Not really much, to be honest with you. Not really anything. And I don't think Offaly will learn anything either. It's, that's kind of the big problem with this game, I think.
And another big problem before we end the podcast as well is just the margin of victory, as you mentioned there, could be 20 plus. How do you think that will affect Offaly going to the Tailteann Cup? Just look at that. Look at the scoreline come the end of Sunday evening. Yeah,
it could be detrimental, to be honest. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of wanted Laois to be in here instead, just because Laois are a team who've had a lot more confidence throughout. Obviously, winning Division 4. I think if Laois were to get hammering, they brush it off and then they go into the Tailteann Cup. Whereas Offaly have had a bad year, and a very young team as well, much younger than Laois's team. A lot of under-20 lads who've obviously made the breakthrough, like Jack Bryant, Cormac Egan, Keith O'Neill. If they're Declan Kelly's obviously a relatively novice coach at this level as well, at senior level. So, like, if they were to get an absolute hammering, they could carry that in to the Tailteann Cup. It's very, very possible, and that would just be a massive shame.
It will be, and to be honest, there's not much more we could say about this game. Dublin to win this easily. And that's the end of the podcast for this week. Give the video a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Subscribe to my YouTube. Follow on Spotify as well. Give the podcast a rating. Thanks to Aaron for coming on today. Thanks to Capture Athletics for sponsoring today's show. And until the next time, guys, we'll see you then. And take care.